Hello, and thank you for listening. Chapter 5. Lewis turned to Ethan as the other Cryptoi returned to the pack, waiting to hear the result of his conversation with the new Signals Intelligence officer. The two of them had grown close late in their training when Zack had requested them both for his fire team ahead of real-world infiltration exercises. Lewis had quickly come to rely on Ethan's readings of people. His knack for rooting out the dangerous layers of a person's makeup were critical to several of their missions. Lewis had also learned that Ethan's methods of investigation could force those dangerous layers to the top, where they would charge a price in blood. Not Resolute's blood, of course, but Lewis could not abide distractions. "Siggy's a piece of work," Ethan muttered, halting at Lewis's side. Jealous, defiant, self-important. Suboptimal. He tapped his gloved fingers against the armor plate at his thigh, a sure sign to Lewis that there was more on his mind. "And," Lewis prodded, "and he hates us. Maybe just me, but I think it's all Spartans. Partly because we scare the daylights out of him." "Does he fear us or hate us more?" Ethan snorted. Little guy's petrified, but he's working on it. Based on the seething look Lewis had seen on the Siggy's face after Ethan spoke to him, he suspected their conversation had helped Andre along significantly. "What use does the commander have for a man like that?" Ethan shook his helmet slightly. "Nothing we're involved with, hopefully." Lewis sent a confirmation mark to Ethan's visor to signal his agreement. A moment later, Zack's voice spoke through their helmet comms, and both Cryptea focused on him. "Here it is, Resolute. Extraction conditions mean we can't risk our Pelican, and the chance of future hostile pursuit of the artifact means we're not leaving any traces foreign to the terrain. We'll naked drop. Weapons acquisition on site." Lewis sent another confirmation mark to Zack's visor. The plan made sense. Their Mjolnir and shields could withstand the friction of atmospheric entry, which left the Pelican protected on the breach until they called it for extraction. And using only those weapons which were already on the planet's surface ensured that they wouldn't leave behind any bullets, casings, or other combat traces that could be found and used to track them. Plus, it was a wonderful psyop when the next hostile force arrived and found their predecessors wiped out by their own arsenal. A return confirmation from Zack blinked in Lewis's visor, meaning that Zack and Ethan had agreed with the plan too. Lewis rolled his massive shoulders while Ethan cracked each knuckle in sequence and then bounced on the balls of his feet. Hector ran his gauntleted hands down the sealed flaps of the kit packs on his chest, swept them off the last pouch, and then pounded his fists against their opposite shoulder plates with enough force to turn bones to powder. Zack only walked to the blue atmosphere containment shield and peered out, down to the planet's surface below. Lewis and the other Cryptea arrayed beside him. After a moment of stillness, a green execute marker blinked on in their HUDs, and Resolute dove out into space. Emmanuel Banks peeked down at Andre from behind, amused by the serious fiddling the shorter man was applying to his nose. Andre's fingers ran gingerly up and down, bending the tip back and forth slightly with his mouth held open in a little O. "Some problem, Lieutenant?" Andre jerked his hands away, but didn't turn to face Banks, instead staring straight ahead at the elevator door. "No, sir." Red marks stood out where his fingers had been a moment ago, complemented by the blush growing in his cheeks. Banks smirked. Under normal circumstances, Andre's SIGINT position would be occupied by another member of the breach's cross-trained analyst crew. The circumstances of the current mission demanded someone else, however. Someone without an attachment to the members of Resolute, or even to the glorious image of Spartans that was held almost universally across the UNSC. Lieutenant Sulikov's psyche valves had described a satisfactory candidate for Banks' purposes, highlighted by such phrases as above average intellect, jealous and manipulative of peers, sycophantic with superiors, recklessly inquisitive, marked drive for self-preservation in individual and team scenarios. So far, Andre had lived up to the billing. The elevator doors hissed open. Into the breach was among Oni's most advanced assets, but no expense had been suffered on comfort. The sterile corridor that led to the bridge was devoid of any decoration, save intra-ship navigation lines and bulkhead numbers. A blue and yellow line led to the command deck, culminating at a set of double-sealing pressure doors that released with a popping hiss to let the officers in. Willard's voice spoke through the bridge speakers as Banks entered. "Commander on deck." The bridge crew turned from their stations to face Banks, who waved them back. "As you were. Willard, configure Station Alpha 2 for signals interception. Connect it to UNSC and Covenant scanners, please." Like many of the UNSC's ships, the breach had a slightly elevated platform for its captain's command chair, and an arc of specialist stations recessed into the floor and walls around it. Banks guided Andre to an unoccupied station just to the right of the command chair, and drummed the butt of his ancestor's revolver as the ship AI finished linking the station to the ship's network of sensors and databases. After a few moments, Willard's avatar, a greenish hologram of a kind-looking man in dress pants and a wrinkled work shirt, appeared above the station's projector. "Station Alpha 2 linked to ship systems. Awaiting user profile creation." Andre moved quickly into the seat, bouncing it to his preferred height before setting upon the station's controls. Willard looked to Banks and raised an eyebrow at the lieutenant's failure to wait for an order. From the corner of his eye, the commander saw similar curiosity from the nearby bridge crew members, but he only rolled his fingers across the revolver's charred grip a final time and leaned over Andre. "Fill me in." Andre pointed to the screen on his left and spoke in a voice that practically buzzed with energy. "Standard Covenant Battlenet intercept and analysis algorithms, outputting hostile data and predictions here." He moved his finger to the screen on the right. "My own algorithms here, which include weighted consideration of live site data and friendly movements to construct alternate hostile predictions and recommend actions." Satisfaction preened on his face. "Which one is more accurate in combat?" Banks asked, sounding annoyed. Andre squinted at the screen and rolled his lips together before speaking. "Technically, mine hasn't seen combat yet, but the recursive learning component is more robust than ONI standard, so it'll get better quickly, and, Banks reached over Andre's shoulder and reset the processing tree for the left monitor. "Fine. Reconfigure this one for friendly data stream monitoring, then, and store your algorithm run data for review post-op." Andre's fingers dashed to the controls, bringing up a matrix of human signals and sources. "I can route the prediction data to one of your data screens." "No, Lieutenant. Let's not ask your code to run before it's learned to stand. I need your full attention on this." Banks tapped the selector, and data streams from the 4 members of Fireteam Resolute filled his screen. Audio, visual, and biometric data from the Mjolnir sensors and systems, including intersuit communications. Andre's jaw practically dropped, and he spun to look at the commander. "Sir?" Banks's gaze didn't budge from the Cryptea's data flows. "The last science report from the excavation site described the artifact as being able to interface with all known computer systems, including biological." His brow darkened. "Biological computers is egghead for brain." Andre remembered the cold abandonment of local survivors specified in the briefing earlier, and connected the dots. Any humans on site could be contaminated by the artifact. This was a quarantine measure. Banks saw the understanding dawn in his eyes and continued. "For all the hell they've sown, Resolute still believes we can't save humanity by abandoning civilians. I need you to monitor them and tell me if they're risking our containment of whatever is going on down there. Right now, they're the tip of a spear pointed into something we don't understand, and we may have to cut that tip off to save the shaft and the man holding it. Can you handle that?" Andre cracked his knuckles and grinned at Resolute's data stream. "Yes, sir."